Welcome to the final session of my system of herbal energetics. This is a bonus section I added, and welcome to all of you who are joining us live and also to those who will be joining us later on YouTube. This final session is the energetics of relationships. And this was not in my original plan, but as I was putting the other three modules together, I realized that I was missing out on a very important aspect of energetics, which is how it helps us understand relationships. And I talked about the concept of nesting and stacking with these energetic models, how you can take something and you can break it down into an energetic model, but how you can also take something and combine it with something higher in an energetic model. And relationships are basically taking us as individuals and putting us in higher relationships with each other as an example of the stacking principle of energetics. And I want to talk about the idea of physical and spiritual reality first, because energetics is actually a way of looking at what we might call spiritual reality. We observe the physical world through our five senses. We can see things, hear things, touch things, and smell things. We can also create instruments that detect other phenomenon within the physical world. But we observe the spiritual, or what we would call in this webinar, the energetic, through our mind and heart, and we perceive it through the relationships that exist between the physical things that we see. So on a concrete level, the idea of magnetism and gravity are concrete examples of this. No one actually really knows what gravity is. We can observe the effects of it. What Newton defined is how gravity operates, but he and all of the quantum physicists and everything of today still don't know what gravity is. No one can touch gravity, taste gravity, see gravity. We can just observe its effects by observing how objects interact. And it's similar with the idea of magnetism, as you see here with the iron filings. So I want to give an example of what I'm talking about. If I'm a lover of poetry, come from a family who love poetry, and you'll read in poems things that are similar in metaphor. For example, I might say, my love is like the red, red rose. Well, if you look at the woman and you look at the rose, what do they physically have in common? They are not the same shape, they are not the same color, they are not the same size. They do not have any qualities that we would think of as physical in relationship to each other. What the poet is observing is an invisible conceptual relationship that exists within the human soul, the idea of beauty. They are both beautiful. They are connected by a higher concept that we call beauty. And this is what I'm referring to as the spiritual or energetic nature of things. So when it comes to relationships, our relationships are governed by these invisible principles. When we see two people who are in love, we're observing an interaction that exists between two people. We can't actually uh, feel, taste, smell, or observe love, but we all have felt it. We all know its effects. We all know it exists, but it's part of this spiritual or energetic direction. One of the things that we have in terms of relationships is the idea of polarity um, involved in attraction. And attraction is actually created by polarity. If I take a north pole of a magnet and a south pole of a magnet, the magnetism draws them together. But if I try to put two north poles of a magnet together, the likeness that exists between the two of them repels them. So in reality, when we talk about relationships, we think that we're attracted primarily to people who are like us, but actually we're far more attracted to people who are different than us, because difference creates polarity. And you can see this in the physical world with the idea of chemistry and electrical charges. The chemical elements or atom form relationships or connections with other atoms based on electrical charges. And so when we have the basic elements, in the periodic table of elements, they all have certain electrical frequencies. And this allows them to basically form bonds or connections with other elements that form compounds. And those compounds are a new thing, a higher thing created out of the elements that have been combined by the other elements. Atoms that have electron shells, and these shells have a certain number of electrical charges they can hold. And if they have a deficiency of electrical charges in a particular shell, they can either be hungry to find electrons to fill those or be willing to donate electrons to basically create some kind of balance. And this sharing of electrical charges is what creates compounds in chemistry and basically holds the entire world together. This exchange of energy is relationship, and it is an example of energetics in relations. So, as I mentioned, opposites attract. Magnetic poles repel each other if they're the same energy, but opposite poles draw together. The opposites attract because they create an exchange of energies that helps to create a balanced state. When it comes to human bonds, these same energetic principles govern how we interact with other people. We bond with other people to create things like couples, families, friendships, and communities. And this is much like molecules that link together to form new compounds. This thing we call the community, the family, the friendship, the nation, whatever, is basically a larger structure into which we belong. In fact, we might also say that we all belong to humanity. The new compound is defined as a relationship, and we are drawn into these relationships because we in and of ourselves are not energetically balanced. We all have a personality, and we talked about constitutional types in a previous webinar. And these constitutional types have strengths and they have weaknesses. So in order for us to have more balanced energy, these strengths and weaknesses cause us to have attractions in relationships that pull us into bonds with people who have strengths where we have weaknesses and weaknesses where we have strengths. And in these attractions, we're actually seeking to create a balanced state. And the relationship actually helps to balance our energies. There's an exchange in a compound of electrons that is being taken place. And in all relationships, there is some kind of energy exchange that's taking place, some kind of spiritual or energetic connection that is linking these things together. We in relationships give something that the other person wants in exchange for something. We give something to them in exchange for what we want. In happy relationships, we each receive something beneficial from the relationship. In unhappy relationships, we're learning things about ourselves and about other people and revealing the imbalances that are present in ourselves and other people. In these energy exchanges, there are 4 possible energetic connections that we have with other people. There is the win-win, which is the ideal, where the energy exchange is balanced and fair. And these are the relationships that endure, that have happiness and enduring qualities to them. There are also lose-lose relationships where both parties basically are not gaining what they want and losing something to the other party. And those are, of course, very unhappy relationships. The unstable relationships are the ones where one person is getting what they want and the other person is giving but not receiving back what they want. There is still an exchange taking place in these relationships. And I'll talk about what those exchanges are later on in this webinar. But those exchanges are unstable. They are not happy exchanges. And generally speaking, they ultimately deteriorate into lose-lose relationships. There are people who try to win at the expense of others, a win-lose relationship, and there are people who lose to try to help others win. And those are the self-martyring, people-pleasing relationships where a person lacks the self-esteem to expect what they want from a relationship. Now, I really like the essay Compensation by Ralph Waldo Emerson because he explains these principles extremely well. And reading his essay really helped solidify my understanding of energetics and the idea of yin and yang and polarity and an equilibrium and so forth. One of the universal laws of all energetics is that in every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Now, that is a law of physics that exists in the physical world. That's how a rocket moves, is by shoving energy out of one end, it pushes it forward out of the other end. Equal and opposite reaction. Because energy is always seeking equilibrium. That is, there is a balancing force in all actions. And Emerson really explains this very well in his essay here. I put the finger touching the water to create the ripple because one of the things you can see is, remember, if you attended one of my previous webinars, I talked about manifest versus unmanifest energy. What you see manifest in the touching of the pool is a wave moving out across the surface of the water away from the finger. What you do not see is there is an equal and opposite wave moving underneath the surface coming back to the finger. There is always an equal and opposite reaction. One is manifest, it's visible on the surface. The other is unmanifest, coming underneath the surface. So Emerson says it this way: polarity or action and reaction, we meet in every part of nature, in darkness and light, in heat and cold, in the ebb and flow of waters, in male and female, in electricity, galvanism, and chemical affinity. We just talked about some of that with magnetism and chemistry and so forth. Superinduced magnetism at one end of a needle, and the opposite magnetism takes place at the other end. If the south attracts, the north repels. To empty here, you must condense there. And to condense there, you must empty here. There's always a balancing action. And this is expressed in human terms in our relationships as the law of the harvest. As you sow, so shall you reap. Each action that we take is like planting a seed. And Emerson talks about this in his essay, basically saying that the seed, the effect, that is what happens from the action, was present in the action. Just as the oak tree is present in the acorn in unmanifest form, so likewise the effects that we receive in our life are found within the actions we take, because every action we take in life has an equal and opposite reaction. This is a cause and effect relationship. And the reason why we're able to do all we can in the world with all the devices we've created, with this whole experience of me talking to you on a computer over the internet, blah, 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 is because we have learned that there are dependable cause and effect laws in the universe that do not change. And because we've learned to create things that act in harmony with those laws, we're able to invent and achieve many, many different kinds of things. One of the problems that I've come to realize we have in our relationship aspect, our human interactions, is that we have not yet learned that there are dependable cause and effect relationships in how we interact with each other. We can't control, we can control the actions we take, which is the cause we put out into the universe, but we can't control the reaction or the effect because the reaction was already established in the action as the final plant is found in the seed. This is the principle that ties to the golden rule. The golden rule is found in every major world religion expressed in one form or another. It is expressed in both a positive form and in a negative form. In the negative form, it says, don't do to others something you wouldn't want them to do to you. And in the positive form, do to others what you would like them to do for you. Ralph Waldo Emerson expressed it this way: because of the dual constitution of things, in labor as in life, there can be no cheating. The thief steals from himself. The swindler swindles himself. He who is great confers the most benefits. He is base, and that is the one base thing in the universe, to receive favors and render none. Emerson basically makes a point, and I believe it's absolutely true, that you cannot get away with sowing bad seeds and not having bad effects come back to you. He actually maintains that deceitful actions are punished immediately, because while I am in good relationships with another person, the moment I decide to do something to my advantage against them, there is immediately a shift in the energy that exists between us. If I know that I've cheated my neighbor, I will not be able to relate to him in the same way I related to him before. There, I will sense a sense of guilt or fear or some emotional thing that will make me want to justify myself and blah blah blah, and relationships will begin to deteriorate and break down the minute we violate this. But what I'm also suggesting here is relationships will always wind up balanced. That is, that the person who tries to win by making other people lose will eventually lose, because the action that they put forth of being willing to allow someone else to lose so they can win will eventually draw back them losing so someone else can win. There is always an equal and opposite reaction in all relationships. And I would suggest that any relationship you stay in for a long period of time, there is some sort of benefit you're receiving from it, although it might be a kind of dysfunctional benefit that you're receiving from it, but you're receiving a benefit from it, or you would not stay in it, you would end it. And I'm going to explain that a little bit better later. So don't, get defensive, because I know maybe you, like me, have been in some bad relationships, but I'm going to explain what I'm talking about a little bit later. Anyway, Ralph Waldo Emerson again puts it this way: men suffer all their life long under the foolish superstition that they can be cheated. But it is as impossible for a man to be cheated by anyone but himself as for a thing to be and not be at the same time. There is a third silent party in all our bargains. There is always a cause and effect relationship, an equal and opposite reaction to every action we take. There are three basic energetics of relationships. There is attraction, which relates to the yin idea of drawing in. What we're attracted to, we draw to ourselves, or at least we magnetically or energetically move towards it, and we also are willing to let it in, let it become part of our lives. There is also repulsion, which is the yang side of things. There are things that repulse all of us, that we don't like being around. We don't like being around certain behaviors. We don't like being around certain kinds of people, and we tend to push them out of our lives and form barriers to keep them at a distance. Where we have bonding, where we create a of a lasting kind of relationship like that compound that's formed of two elements, that's because there is equilibrium in the exchange. In other words, there is something that each party is giving and the other party is receiving that stays fairly balanced. Now, no relationship is balanced all the time, but if it's balanced over time, it basically will create a lasting connection or relationship. Now, this relates to the three basic principles of human relationship that we're going to talk about tonight: judgment, justice, and mercy. Mercy is the expansive side of human interaction. When I say mercy, I'm talking about being kind, charitable, um, towards others, being open to other people, being friendly with other people, having goodwill towards other people. This is the concept of mercy. Mercy is the idea that I overlook people's faults, that I'm gracious with other people in terms of not being overly judgmental. Opposite of mercy is judgment. Justice is not the opposite of mercy, judgment is. Judgment is what separates people and pushes them apart. When we judge others, there is always something that creates a barrier or a division between people. When a judge sits in a courtroom and he sentences someone, he separates them from their life, their liberty, their property. Somehow he creates a separation of them from something. That's a judgment. Okay. Now, there are relationships based on judgment, and judgment-based relationships tend to be something that psychologists call codependent relationships, and we'll elaborate on that in a minute. Justice relationships are relationships where there is equilibrium between people. Relationships based on justice will be equal and fair. So, for example, lasting businesses, okay, businesses that are able to stay in for the long haul, that don't have forcible help from judgment in the form of unfair laws and political maneuvering or whatever. Justice level relationships will last, just as though businesses, I'm saying, will last, because what the person is giving their money for, uh, they get back from that business something that they value. So there is a justice level exchange in a healthy business relationship. I want something that business offers, and I trade my money in exchange for what that business offers. Like I have explained to people with economics, the people don't want money, they want goods and services. As soon as you get money, what you do is you immediately want to go, well, you want to somehow invest it to make your life better, to get goods and services that you want. So you don't want the money, you want the goods and services that you can exchange money for. So I tell people, if you want to make money, if you want a business, make money, you have to reverse that. You have to figure out something that benefits other people that they want, that they're willing to give you money for. Okay? And because that's the justice in that. So these are the three principles of human interaction. And I'm just going to briefly mention, I talked a little bit about the tree of life, and in the center world of the tree of life, you have the three spheres that also represent the concepts of the three pillars: mercy, judgment, and justice, which are expansion, contraction, and equilibrium. And there's pathways on the tree between those. And the pathway between mercy and judgment is called kaf, and it refers to polishing, rubbing together. And judgment being the desire we have to push people away and protect ourselves, mercy the idea of wanting to have love and enter into a relationship. And those two things are at conflict in us all the time. We want to be close to people, but we also don't want people to hurt us. And that is a polishing interaction between the two. What creates the peace, harmony, and so forth of a good relationship is justice, communion, having a balanced exchange of energy that allows us to understand, commune, work together in harmony, which also creates the opposite of that, which is peace and balance. And I could go into a lot of detail on that, but I'm going to just gloss over it. This also relates to energetically 3 types of love that we experience. And this was one of the most important insights I ever got from this whole energetic concept, was to realize these 3 different types of love, because one of our problems in English is we're using the word love to label a lot of different emotional states. And fortunately, in Greek, they had some different words that represent different kinds of love. And so I can use those words to represent these 3 types of love: eros, the judgment level love; philia, the justice level love; and agape, the mercy level love. Judgment level love is actually self-love, and the love of physical things that benefit me. And this love is experienced as desire. When I say I love ice cream, I mean that ice cream is a physical thing that brings me pleasure, and therefore I love it. It is a love that's saying I desire ice cream. Okay? Philia level love is loving my neighbor in the same way as I love myself, which is a justice-based love, meaning treating others as I want them to treat me. This law of the harvest idea. It is an emotional love that produces happy feelings. We have happy feelings when we make good exchanges with other people. And love is experienced as this exchange of energy that includes things like loyalty, fairness, and so forth. And I mentioned that in terms of a good business relationship with a business and its customers. Agape love is the mercy level love, which is selfless, unconditional love. It is the love of the mind that has goodwill towards others. It is love that is experienced as giving to others where there is no benefit in it for me, and forgiving others who have not treated me fairly according to the laws of justice. So to illustrate this, I created this model. I used to go to this little spiritual group here in St. George called Exploring Oneness, and they would bring in speakers from out of town, and also some of us who were in the group would periodically make presentations. So I would present there a couple of times a year, and I wanted to present this idea to people. So I came up with this tale of 3 cookies. I baked some chocolate chip cookies, and I said, okay, maybe you like my chocolate chip cookies. There's 3 ways you could get one. First, you could take it. That's judgment level relationship. You want the cookie and you don't care how you get it from me. So you could steal it. You could threaten me, say, don't give me a cookie, I'm gonna, punch you in the nose. And I just, okay, all right, I'll give you the cookie, whatever. But you're taking the cookie with no benefit to me. This is what happens in all judgment level relationships. There is a winner, there is a loser. There is a trespasser and a victim, an abuser, or an enabler. These are all just judgment level relationships. And that cookie being taken is an example of that energy exchange. There is an energy exchange that takes place, but it's not a healthy energy exchange. It's based on selfishness, not fairness. Cookie number 2 is sold or traded. Person could come to me and say, you know what? I love one of those cookies. How much do you want for them? I'd say, hey, 50 cents. I say, sure. And they hand me 50 cents and we made an exchange. I got 50 cents, they got the cookie. We each got something we wanted. There was fairness. There could be a partnership involved in that, but that is a love or exchange based on voluntary cooperation between equals. Very, very important words there. Voluntary. Nobody was coerced. Cooperation. We worked together to make sure each of us got something we want. Equals, meaning no one was better or worse than the other person. We were both equal in the exchange. The third way is you could say, hey, could I have a cookie? And I'd say, sure. And I hand you the cookie. I don't ask you for anything in return. I don't expect anything in return. And you receive the cookie. That is agape level love and agape level relationship. It is the relationship of charity. That word has kind of got a bad connotation, but it was actually agape in the Greek, and it was translated in the New Testament as charity. A lot of biblical things now translated as love, but it's a giving love. It is a love that is just doing something for someone else with not being concerned about what you get in return. Now, the reciprocal role in this is the person who receives. And when you receive something that was given to you in agape love, it evokes gratitude. You are grateful. You are thankful. So there's the giver and the receiver, and the receiving is done with gratitude or thankfulness. So these are roles. The trespasser and victim is a relationship role. The partnership or voluntary cooperation is a role, and the giver and receiver is a role. So with that background, let's explore these three levels of human interaction and these three levels of love, and talk about how they relate to our lives. So we'll start with the level of judgment. So, as I mentioned, to judge is to decide someone should be separated from something in their possession. When you judge someone, you feel that they should be deprived of something. They should be deprived of your love, your company, your goodwill, their property, their freedom, something. You want something to be taken from them. That's what happens when you judge someone. You want something to be taken from them. You can have a right judgment. Like I say, if I'm walking down the street and I see someone grab a woman's purse and make off with it, and I chase after them and knock to the ground and take the purse away from them and give it back to the woman they stole it from, I just made a good judgment. The purse did not belong to the thief, and I was perfectly right in taking it away from the thief and restoring it to the person who it actually belonged to. That was an act of judgment, but it was an act of what we might call right judgment. I had when I was in that group one time, I said if I saw someone abusing a child, and there was a 2x4 sitting by, I'd probably grab the 2x4 and go clunk them on the head. And there's some people like, ah! Like I said, are you kidding? It would be the most loving thing you do. I'm rescuing a child. Okay, that's a perfectly legitimate, just judgment to be making. So there can be right or righteous judgment and wrong or unrighteous judgment. Righteous judgment is when we desire to separate something from someone that what they've done is not rightfully theirs. Now, there is a judgment level mindset, and we all start out on the judgment level mindset as children. That is, we all start out life egocentric. That is, we desire what we desire, and we do not think of how it impacts other people around us. I have never seen a baby that if they are hungry in the middle of the night, or they wake up and they've, spoiled their diaper, that they think, I just woke up mom 2 hours ago. She's probably tired. I can wait another hour or two to, give mom some rest before I, no, they cry and they want what they want and they want it now. We're all born into the world that way. We all have an egocentric part of ourselves that wants to gain, that wants what we want, desires what we desire. And to the extent that we live only in that part of ourselves, we are on a judgment level mindset, because that means that innately that mindset creates competition. In order for me to get something I want, I have to get it from you. There have to be winners and losers. Okay? It also creates the idea of good guys and bad guys. Good guys are people who give me what I want. Bad guys are people who don't. Good guys should be rewarded. Bad guys should be punished. Also, there is a mindset associated with this, that there's a scarcity of resources. If you gain, I lose. If I see you being successful, I'm jealous because you have something that I want. If I don't have a good relationship and I see you have a good relationship, I'm going to be jealous or covetous or whatever, because obviously you have what I don't want. Now, understand, if I saw you have a good relationship, I think I want one of those too, and I can get it, but I don't have to be jealous of you, because I realize there's no scarcity of resources. There's no idea that says that I can't have it too. You could have it and I can have it. We both can have it. Okay. And this is the level of erotic love. Now, eros, the term eros, is the root of the word erotic, which is usually used to depict sexual love. But it also is a good word to describe the idea of love as desire. Judgment level love is the love of the self and the desire for what benefits me. I want you. I want you because I perceive that you will benefit me. I love you because I perceive in you a benefit for me. I'm not really thinking of you. I'm thinking of you as beneficial to me. That's what I mentioned earlier. That's the I love ice cream. Now, Jesus stated in the New Testament, if you love those that love you, what thank have ye? Do not even the publicans do the same? I translate it as, if you love those who love you, what's so special about that? Everybody can do that. we could all love people who give us what we want, right? No, nothing special about that. That's human nature. That's the most base form. Now, on the other side, a person who's experiencing being desired, that is, feeling loved, i.e. desired by someone else, that's very feeding to your ego, right? I mean, good grief, this person wants me. They desire me. That means I'm good, I'm special, I am something, okay? And that means maybe I can get what I want out of them, right? Like, okay, they want me, what do I want from them? All right. So I can now perceive I have some power over you. So people will mistake being desired for being loved. Okay. They will think, because that level, if I'm operating on that level and I don't understand any other kind of love, then being desired is the love I want, because it gives me power to get what I want. You understand? And in fact, there are many people who living on that level would rather experience eros coming towards them than philia or agape love, because philia love means that they would have to see this other person as an equal, and they would have to negotiate with them and learn how to create a mutually beneficial exchange. And it's definitely not agape love to when you're experiencing liking to be experience being desired. People, you've all heard the expression give and take. And I thought about that. Give and take. Taking implies, remember going back to the first cookie, that I get something without the other person voluntarily giving it to me. And I realized we should really rephrase that to what it's really saying, bribing and taking. That if I give to the other person in a manipulative way, then I can take from them what I want. So in my little Exploring Oneness group, I did another presentation talking about this. And I made this little package. I wrapped up this little box in wrapping paper with a pretty bow on it. And inside I put a string attached to a stick through a hole in the bottom. And I had a little loop on the string. And I put the loop over my finger and put the package in my hand so you couldn't see the string. And I said to one of the people, here, I have a gift for you. And they took the gift. And of course, when they take the gift, out comes the string and zoop, okay, there's a string attached. In all giving on the level of judgment, there is always a string attached. I'm giving only because I am hoping that I can take what I want, that I'm going to form a connection and then I'm going to be able to get what I want. But it's not a voluntary getting, it's that I can obligate them into giving me what I want. Not that they will voluntarily do it, but I've manipulated them to do it. I hope you're getting the feel for this, because there's a feel for this level, okay, of relationships. And this also helped me understand this idea that there's a thin line between love and hate. Because for a long time I was like, how can that be? I mean, if someone really loves someone, and I was thinking from the standpoint of agape love, if someone really loves someone, if they care about them with no thought of what's in it for them, how could that turn to hate? It's impossible for that to turn to hate. Agape love can never hate, but eros love can hate, because if I love you because of the benefit I perceive I can get from you and the pleasure I can derive from what I love, and then I stop getting that pleasure and instead I have a bad experience with it, then my desire can turn to repulsion, and repulsion becomes hatred. The desire and the hatred you can flip. One of my favorite writers, Anthony DeMello, in his book Awareness, says that people, when they first quote unquote fall in love, have a delusion. They see all these things in this other person that they desire, and so they don't fall in love with the person as a human being. They fall in love with this illusion they have about all of the good things that are going to happen because of this love relationship. Then usually a year or two into the relationship, when all of the person's human weaknesses start to come forth, they trade one delusion for another, and they start seeing all the negative in the person. In either case, they're not seeing the person as they themselves are. A person that has a mixture of strengths and weaknesses, of good qualities and bad qualities, they're seeing them through an illusionary idea. So this idea of love by desire and love and hatred are both based on this delusionary love, where we're projecting our needs onto someone else, expecting them to be fulfilled. I hope this is making sense, and if any of you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in there. And also later when I have this on YouTube, if any of you want to place comments in the section below, I'd be happy to have any discussion about any part of this with anyone. Okay. Now, in order for a relationship that's at a judgment level to exist, you have to have a yin role and a yang role. The yang role is the taker or the abuser who has an inflated sense of self-entitlement and believes in unconditional love. You should love me unconditionally. They are willing to use fear, intimidation, and punishment to get what they want. And they derive a sense of power from the relationship, from lording over the other person. In order for someone to stay with a person like that, they have to be an enabler, a people pleaser, which means they have to have a low sense of self-worth. And they believe in unconditional love also. I should love you unconditionally and I should be nice to you no matter how you treat me. But what they tend to use is submission, manipulation, and withholding in order to try to get what they want from the other people. And what they get, and this is, by the way, this was a huge insight into me because I used to play this role a lot in relationships, is I realized that I derived a sense of value, i.e. self-righteousness from the relationship. I was the good guy, they were the bad guy. It was not a relationship between equals. Understand? I was trying to be the good guy, but that's because inwardly, I really didn't have the self-worth to stick up for myself and say, hey, no, I'm not going to do that for you, blah, blah, blah. Sorry. I want this in exchange. To be open and above board and fair and state, this is what I want. I'm willing to give you what you want, but I want what I want too. Okay, and negotiate. And of course, that is a win-lose or on one side and a lose-win relationship on the other side, and it will not last, or at least it won't be happy. It might last because the enabler has such poor self-esteem that they'll just stay there forever and never make any effort to get out of there, but they'll usually die or something bad happens, and it doesn't turn out to be a happy situation for either party in the long run. So let's move now to justice level relationships, the idea of fairness. The mindset of a justice level relationship is relationships should be fair. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Treat me badly, and I'll treat you badly back. People sometimes do good things and sometimes they do bad things, and when they do good things, they should be rewarded, and when they do bad things, they should be punished. Relationships should be win-win. Cooperation gives us more benefits than competition. So if you find yourself in relationships based on judgment level thinking and you're in the enabler abuser kind of situation on either side, or you're not creating happy relationships where you're getting what you want and the other person's getting what they want, then you need to move up to the justice level and realize that any lasting relationship has to have win-win. And that win-win means that that cooperation, the world is not about competition, it's about cooperation. And we actually, if we're seeing things through the lens of judgment, on a judgment level consciousness, we see nature as competition, survival of the fittest. But actually, if you really get into studying nature, you find that nature is far more cooperative and balanced than it is competitive. That an ecosystem that contains a diverse variety of plant and animal life is much more stable than a not so diverse thing, because diversity creates harmony and balance because there are many different things contributing to that harmony and balance. So nature is actually more cooperative than it is competitive. This is the level of filial love. And this is the feeling of being in love. So let me put it this way. Remember, I said we all have desire. There's an ego part of us. When someone is feeding my emotional needs, I will feel in love with them. This means that I will want to be around them. What makes for a happy relationship, and it's not just like between couples or families, but in communities everywhere, all relationship businesses, is when people enjoy being together because everyone is getting their needs met. Happy marriage and family love, loyalty to friends and community, virtue in the community, being equitable. This is the love that creates all kinds of lasting beneficial relationships because both parties are getting their needs met. And this leads into the idea, and by the way, as I'm explaining this, one of the reasons why I got into this is because I was really having problems in relationships. And I'm a person who believes in this, cause and effect, and I believe in this idea of that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. So I began to look around because in that same spiritual group I went to, there was a guy, and he had been married and divorced 3 times. And when he did a presentation at one time, he said, the first time you get divorced, you can think it's the other person's fault. Maybe the second time you can think it's the other person's fault, but when it happens the third time, you think, is there something wrong with me? and I I through the same process, I realized something is wrong. I'm not doing this right. I'm not getting what I want out of relationships. I need to learn things. So I started doing studying, and the stuff that jumped out at me that made sense to me was the stuff that fit the energetic ideas that I had been working on for a long time. It made sense because I went, oh, I see the energetic pattern in that. And one of these was the emotional bank account. The idea that when we do something that benefits someone else and meets some of their emotional needs, we make a deposit to their emotional bank account. When we do something that hurts them, we make a withdrawal from their emotional bank account. The feeling of being in love comes when you have an emotional bank account that's in the black. That is, you're getting more benefits out of the relationship than you're getting hurts. When the hurts become greater than the benefits, the emotional bank account gets overdrawn. It goes into the red, and we fall out of love. So we fall in love and we fall out of love based on emotional bank accounts. This is the conditional nature of philia love. Philia love is conditional. It is not unconditional. Remember, I said the belief in a relationship based on unconditional love is actually a judgmental thing with 2 people. One, I should love you unconditionally, and the other one, you should love me unconditionally. In this, okay, neither one of us need to love the other person, i.e., be with them unconditionally. We need to make the relationship beneficial for both of us. This is where the concept of win-win comes in. Only win-win relationships create lasting feelings of philia, which is relationship love. All relationship love is philia. Stephen R. Covey defines the win-win as a frame of mind and heart that constantly seeks mutual benefit in all human interactions. Win-win means that agreements or solutions are mutually beneficial, mutually satisfying, and all parties feel good about the decision and are committed to the plan. Win-lose and lose-win are judgmental level relationships which eventually deteriorate into lose-lose. To understand how to start achieving win-win relationships or filial love in our lives, we have to understand that winning is not physical, it's emotional. A win is only a win when you do something that makes a person feel good. Not when you do something that you think they need or that you think they should have. It has to be something that they desire, that when they receive it, they feel good. So even if a person is logically getting something they want. For instance, you're giving the other person money, or you're giving the other person sex, or you're giving them material things, or you're showing them your time. It's not a win if the exchange does not result in good feelings. Relationships are based on the energy of feelings. This is an important thing to understand. All relationships are based on feelings, not logic. And therefore, understanding emotions is important, understanding this. You can define what's a win for you. This means you get in touch with what you want and need, what you're looking for, what you're interested in, what would benefit you. The other person defines the win for them. You can't define another person's win, and you can't let someone else define your win. When people tell you what you should want, you don't have to say it out loud, but you can think basically F you and just put up a wall and say, forget that. I'm the one who decides what I want, not you. And you're the one who decides what you want. This is equals. Equals. We're not one is better than the other, one is superior than the other. We're equals. You can't give the other person what you think they ought to have, what you think they need, or what you're willing to give to them and call it a win. That's not a win. You have to get to know them and figure out what they want, which means you have to be willing to be open and listen to what the other person wants. And you also have to be understanding of what you really want and be able to be willing to communicate it. So I'm going to talk about the mindsets of the judgment level relationships, and then I'm going to talk about how you learn to transform those into the higher win-win. So we'll start with the win-lose mindset. In the win-lose mindset, my needs are more important than your needs. So the person who is on the win-lose mindset thinks, I deserve what I want even if you have to lose for me to get it. I'm in charge. I want power and I want control, because by controlling other people and having power, I can get what I want. You don't deserve to win. In other words, whenever we engage in shaming the other person or trying to make them feel guilty about what they want, we are trying over power and willing to make them lose so we can win. It's okay for me to harm you because you deserve it, okay? Because what you did to me was bad, which is a false sense of justice. Now, on the lose-win mindset, your needs are more important than mine. Lack of self-love. I am a victim. People take advantage of me. I don't know why life is so unfair to me. Blah, blah, blah. Self-pity, feeling undeserved guilt. I'm unworthy of winning. I'm not good enough to get what I want. I don't deserve it. I need to prove to the world. I need to be such a good person and loving person to prove to the world that I deserve to get what I want in return. This is called toxic shame. This often comes from being abused as a child. I have to tolerate this being mistreated to be a good person, which is a false sense of right and wrong. Okay? This path ultimately leads to discouragement, depression, and resentment on your part. You can tell when your giving is not motivated by philia or agape love, because you start to resent what you've done for the other person. The resentment shows that you didn't do it just because of your wonderful good nature. You did it because you were investing in the other party, hoping for something in return. And when your investment doesn't pay off, you feel disappointed and resentful because you didn't get what you want. Now, like I said, that can deteriorate to lose-lose. So like when couples get divorced, they often go into the lose-lose mindset. Well, if I'm going to lose, I'm going to make you lose too. I don't care if I lose. I just want revenge. So, I'll lose so I can make you lose. This is the mindset that creates war, the situation in which nobody really wins because everybody loses in a war. A lose-lose mindset is toxic to both parties and the unhealthiest of all relationship patterns. is also the ultimate result of all win-lose-lose-win relationships. Arguments are power struggles. When we argue, we're generally trying to make the other person lose so we can win. To break argument cycles, we need to learn to think win-win and be determined to seek outcome in the place of disagreement. And that requires commitment. You can't have filial love unless you start to see the other person as an equal, not better than you, not worse than you, as just another human being like you trying to get along in this world, blah, blah. How can we negotiate so both of us will get what we want? The things that make withdrawals from emotional bank accounts and destroy this kind of love is using anger, threats, or violence to intimidate or control the other person, rewarding and punishing the other person to try to control them, demanding something for yourself that's not benefit the other person, showing disrespect by making belittling remarks, calling them names, putting them down, saying bad things about them, and also being dishonest, which you can't have an honest exchange if you're dishonest. So if you need to overcome a lose-win mindset, if you're like I used to be, and you're the enabler, people-pleasing person who thinks, oh, I've got to be nice and blah, 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 because, I need to just overlook the fact that they're mistreating me and not giving me what I want, or whatever, you need to work on your own sense of self-worth. You need to recognize that ultimately the other person will lose if they don't if you don't respect your own needs and desires. You do need to listen and try to understand the real needs of the other person, but you also need to say no to deals that aren't a fair exchange for you. Hey, that's not going to work for me. I hear what you want now, but there are things I want. If I'm going to give that to you, you need to give some things to me in return. That means you have to be willing to be bold enough to learn to voice your own needs and insist that your relationships be fair. This is something I had to really, really work on. So any of you who can relate to that, I spent several years working on this. Now, if you find yourself getting into the win-lose mindset, which in my experience, most people who are into natural healing don't have win-lose mindsets most of the time. They have lose-win mindsets. Then you need to shut up and start listening. Stop talking and listening. Ask questions to understand, not to interrogate. There's a tendency for people who are in the win-lose mindset to ask questions like a prosecuting attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you. That does not foster communication. You want to try to get into the other person's point of view, understanding their needs, desires, and feelings, because that's the only way you can understand what is a win for them. Okay? And you have to also, this is something I had learned to do, because I realized that when I'm working with someone who has a lose-win mindset, like in negotiating a business thing, that I have to think about their wants because they're not voicing what they want. And I have to dig in and get to it, because you don't want to accept a situation where you're going to win at the other person's expense. If you do, it won't last, especially in a business relationship. You want it to be a win-win. Recognize that you will ultimately lose if you accept a deal that works for you but doesn't benefit the other person. It won't continue, okay? You've got to make it fair. Also, a point that Stephen R. Covey makes is that win-win is not the same as compromise. Compromise is a partial loss and a partial win for both parties. You may occasionally have to compromise, but compromise usually means that there's a lose-lose. Both parties are losing something, and you're never going to be completely satisfied with compromise. Instead, you have to take the mindset that if you can't achieve win-win, there will be no deal. No deal means that you just agree, okay, we disagree. That's the way it is. So there's no deal until we can find something. By the way, if you really want to understand this, read Stephen R. Covey's book, Seeking the Third Alternative, where he talks about how to find the solution that transcends the polarity. Because usually when you're locked into conflict, you're seeing things as an either or situation. one option or the other option. There is often a higher solution that takes the best of both sides and incorporates them together to create something that both parties can agree on. And Stephen R. Covey's book, Seeking the Third Alternative, is an absolutely amazing book on how to do that. Okay. I want to talk about children just briefly with this. And this is something I read in Anthony DeMello's book, Awareness, that I referred to earlier, where he's actually quoting a man named A.S. Nill, who had this Summerhill School, which I wound up reading some books about because it so fascinated me. A.S. Nill ran this boarding school in which he did not force children. The only rules were rules required by the government. Everything else was negotiated. And he said, every child has a God within them. Our attempts to mold the child, that is to make the child into what we want them to be, to try to control them and manipulate them and move them into what we want to be, turns the God into a devil. Children come to my school, little devils, hating the world, destructive, unmannerly, lying, thieving, bad-tempered. In 6 months, they are happy, healthy children who do no evil. If there's no desire to attack authority, there's no desire to attack authority. They're well-fed and there is no resentment or anger. Come to Summerhill and you'll never find a handicapped child with a nickname. You know how cruel kids can be when someone stammers. You'll never find anyone needling a stammerer ever. There's no violence in these children because no one is practicing violence on them. What he is saying is that our natural nature is to be cooperative. And that if we weren't growing up in a society where we're trained that force is the way to do things, we would find that cooperation is actually natural. And he goes on to say, I am no genius. I am merely a man who refuses to guide the steps of children. In other words, to try to manipulate and control children. I let them form their own values, and the values are invariably good and social. The religion that makes people good makes people bad, but the religion known as freedom makes all people good, for it destroys the inner conflict that makes people devils. And I would also suggest, if you want to get a little bit more of that idea about natural cooperation, that you read a book called The Continuum Concept, about a lady who lived with a South American tribe and talks about some things. That book just blew my mind away with how if we did not have this incredible, like, us or them, competitive, survival of the fittest, judgmental mindset so operative in our culture, we could very naturally find cooperative solutions to a lot of things. Now, I was trying, when I was being an enabler, to be a person who lived on the level of mercy. And that's because I had a really wrong understanding of what agape love is. Relationship love is not agape love. You don't get into relationships with people because of agape love. All relationships have to have philia love, which is a win-win thing in order to have the feeling of wanting to be around someone. And you can have agape love for someone who you don't want to be around, and who you may not actually really like that much. I mean, you don't really care for their personality or their opinions or that sort of thing. And you still have agape love for them. And so we're going to talk about that level. Leo Tolstoy wrote, "The universe is absolutely fair. He wrote, you can love a person dear to you with a human love, but an enemy can only be loved with a divine love." So I want to say that the universe is absolutely fair. How I treat others will determine my future, and how they treat me will determine theirs. Only I determine whether I win or lose in the long run. This is something because I believe very firmly in this law of the harvest idea. I believe that what's important in life is how I treat other people, not how they treat me. How they treat me will sow seeds that come back to create their life, and how I treat them will sow seeds that come back to treat my life. So my goal is I need to treat, because I want to be treated fairly. I want to have I try to treat everybody fairly, even if they consider me an enemy. That doesn't mean I'm going to be buddy-buddy with them. It doesn't mean I'm going to be close to them, but I'm going to at least endeavor to treat them fairly. Now, agape love is not centered on people. Since when you want a relationship, it's a people-centered love. You want a relationship with someone or with a group of people. Agape love has no special relationships. Agape love is a universal love. Any love you feel towards a person or a group of persons is not agape love. In fact, in my emotional healing classes, I've said agape love is the love you feel for Adolf Hitler and Mao Zedong and Genghis Khan and any other person that you might consider evil who's ever lived in the world, any dictator, or depending on which side of the political party you are on, the opposite person on the other side of the political fence. Agape love is what you feel towards them. It's what you feel towards the most evil, disgusting people in the world. Okay? Because agape love is not dependent on the receiver, it's dependent on the giver. Now, that's why I led with Leo Tolstoy. Anybody can love people who are nice to them, treat them fairly, and have positive exchanges with. But it takes something else, a divine love, to have agape love. Anthony DeMello also wrote a book called The Way to Love, and he did a really good job of basically explaining agape love by using some analogies. He says agape love arises from just being who you are, which means you are incapable of not giving it. In other words, agape love arises because of who you are, means that it's not dependent on whether people respond to it or reciprocate it or anything. It's just who you are. It loves everyone the same, including what most would consider enemies. Now, what he does is that he gives the example of, he says, does a rose withhold its fragrance from you if you're a bad person? Or does the rose indiscriminately smell and look beautiful for anybody who wants to appreciate it? Does a lamp withhold its light from an evil person and give its light to a good person? It can't do that because it would cease to be a lamp. The lamp is incapable of being something other than a lamp. And a tree will give shade to anyone, even the person who's about to cut it down. There's the image of what agape love is all about. It's a love that exists just because it exists, and it exists because of the nature of the person who has it. There is no investment in agape love. That is, when I perform an act of agape love, I expect nothing in return, not even a thank you. I don't care whether the other person receives it, appreciates it. It's just something I feel I should do because of the nature of who I am. That's not a concern of the expression of agape love. Agape love is also not conscious of itself. Anything you do trying to be loving is not agape love because it's not natural or innate to who you are, which then goes to a quote in the New Testament. Then the righteous shall answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee hungered and fed thee, or thirsty and gave thee drink? When saw we a stranger and took thee in, or naked and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee in sick and prisoner and came unto you? When did we do these good things? It's unconscious of itself. It's just doing it to do it. Another thing that Anthony DeMello says in his book, The Way to Love, is that agape love is not blind. He says there's nothing as clear-sighted as agape love, as love. And he basically says God loves us and sees each of us with perfect clarity. We don't see other people clearly because we're blinded by our own attachments and desires. That is, we're seeing people through the lens of ourself. So we don't see them clearly. We see them through our own distorted self. If we saw people clearly, we'd love them the way God loves it. And this has been something I've done trying to understand agape love is when I'm not feeling good towards someone, I pray and ask God to help me see them as He sees them, which actually helps change the way I see them. So mercy level relationships are based on agape or unconditional goodwill towards others, including people who are our enemies. Service offered that is not done for others to see. In other words, we're not doing it to get praise or recognition or anything. It's just a random act of kindness. We just did it because it was the right thing to do. Or it also involves forgiveness. Forgiveness is letting go of the need for retribution for hurts or wrongs committed against us. It's also gratitude. One of the things that in my contemplating this was that if you start to want to move into a more agape level of understanding, don't ever expect that anybody owes you anything. Appreciate everything anyone does for you as a gratitude, as a gift of love, as something you didn't deserve. Be thankful. In fact, I like to say, even if you're trying to work with someone on a justice level, meaning you're doing fair exchange, and they're honest, you give them what you agreed and they give you what you agreed, you should be grateful. Grateful because you just had dealt with an honest person. If it turns out you gave them what you want, you had promised and they don't give you what they promised, you forgive them. Forgiveness is letting go of what was supposed to come back to you. And also there is implicit in this the idea of gifts. Things we do for others with no thought of what's in it for me. That's what a gift is. A gift, Christmas presents are not gifts. Christmas presents are social obligations, because if you don't get someone a Christmas present, or you're married and you don't take your wife out for something on Valentine's Day, she's going to be upset because it's an expectation. A true gift is something you do just out of the goodness of your heart that the other person was not expecting and did not believe. So there is a justice in this. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Forgive us our debts as we have forgiven our debtors. In other words, if I sow mercy and charity and compassion into the world, the law of the harvest requires that it comes back to me. Now, as I said, this is not the love of relationship. In your relationships, you have to be willing to negotiate, talk, work through things to try to create mutual beneficial win-win. This, however, is the law that's the higher law that helps unite you to humanity as a whole. So here's the things I learned about connecting to a mercy level consciousness. You have to connect with the divine and let the divine love flow through you. You can't generate this on your own. That's what I started off with Leo Tolstoy saying. It's something that flows through you from a source outside of you. It is not something you generate within yourself because your little ego can't do it. When you get a prompting to do something to bless others, do it with no expectation of anything in return. These are just small things that you just do. Like, I think the start of my practicing this came when I just basically decided, ask God to show me each day some way in which I could be helpful to others with no expectation of anything in return. And I found many small little things would happen. I'd see someone who needed help or having something, and I just go step over and help them and walk away. And that was what helped start me on this practice. And then the other one was being thankful for everything anybody gives me, anything people do to me, and even thankful for the challenges you have in life because you see them as opportunities for growth. Don't have expectations that other people should treat you in any particular way. That does not mean that you have to allow people to mistreat you, but don't expect them. If they don't treat you fine, hey, you don't have to associate with them. Move on. Practice forgiveness. Let go of the past. Now, I want to say something about forgiveness. Forgiveness is letting go of the need to get retribution. When you forgive someone, it doesn't mean you have to trust them. Trust is earned trust is part of filial love. And you have to have trust in filial love. You don't have to have trust in agape love. Forgiveness is an agape action. It is not a philia action. A philia action requires trust. Now, I hope I made sense of all of that. I actually want to write a book on this. And so I hope, that I'll be able to do. I've got 2 books I'm trying to work on right now, and this will be the third book I want to write after that. Is about this whole idea of the levels of human love and go into a lot more detail with it. But I want to end with some more practical application. I'm sorry this is going so long, but it's a really important thing. Playing the win-win relationship game. Most of us have dysfunctional role models. Many of us had both bad role models as parents. TV, movies, and most popular music display dysfunctional relationships constantly. And if you look at the lyrics of many songs, they are not about love. They're about desire, eros love. And you see this in things like love hurts, love scars, love wounds, love mars. Love is not a victory march. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. All of this is referring to the kind of love where we're seeking something to benefit ourselves and it doesn't work out. Anyway, if your relationships aren't working, you probably have a lot to unlearn, because I sure did. I had to really do this. Win-win is a team sport. The only winning game in relationships is win-win. And to win in a relationship, you have to take a position that it's not you or your partner that wins, it's your team that wins. It's the higher connect. It's the new thing that's created by your relationship. Understand? The what wins is the new entity that's made up of you and the other person, or you and the other group of people. And so you have to see it this way. Anything that benefits you, anything that benefits your partner benefits you, and anything that harms your partner harms you, and they have to see it the same way. In other words, because you are a team, then what harms one harms both of you. What benefits one benefits both of you, okay? Because you're looking at what the team does. And a way to express this is something that C. Samuel West, when I worked at the National Academy of Lymphology, he really loved saying this. Our differences become our strengths when we're united on a common goal. So teams have a common goal, have common goals and objectives. And so the different personalities and the different strengths and weaknesses of the partners benefit the team because they bring additional skills and abilities to the achievement of the common goals. All team sports require roles, and you have to be willing to play your role or play your position. And you also have to agree what those roles and positions and rules of the game are. So whenever you're playing a relationship game, you have to decide the roles and decide the rules. All positions in the team have responsibilities and they have rights. Rights and responsibilities go together. The rights or privileges of a role come from assuming the responsibilities of the role. To try to claim the rights associated with a role without assuming the responsibilities of that role destroys the team. Since all of us have unresolved emotional issues that will trigger us into emotional reactions, when that happens, we stop playing the game and we act impulsively. When something triggers you, this is not your partner doing this to you. It is something that happened that triggered something inside of you. And therefore, there's something inside of you that you need to look at, because relationships are crucibles for growth. This was another thing I really learned that was very beneficial to me. That if something is triggering me emotionally in a relationship, there's something inside of me I need to work through. And the relationship brings out the issue and allows me to work on it. Blaming the other person for your being emotionally triggered is like blaming a rock for stubbing your toe. The rock didn't stub your toe. You bumped into the rock. The rock didn't bump into you. Okay? If you start to understand your triggers and communicate your feelings, you need to learn to do that without blaming the other person for the emotional trigger. Also have to let go of the entitlement mentality. The entitlement mentality is that you owe me what I want and I don't have to do anything for you in return. This is the judgment level mindset. The entitlement mentality is narcissistic and takes all the fun out of relationship games and basically ruins the games for all the players. There's no win-win. Okay, you control your actions, what you do for others, but you can't control what you receive back because remember, that's the cause and effect are built in. So if you're not getting what you want, who needs to change? You. Who needs to do something different? You. If you're not getting what you want in relationships, the person who needs to change is you because you're not doing something to put out the right kind of energy to get back what you want. You're not playing the role and taking the responsibilities that will then create a reciprocal role for the other person so both of you will win. I know you're going to have to, I'm going really fast, but you'll have to kind of contemplate this, and I've got a bunch of reading materials and everything on the website. There are two primary relationship roles, the yin role and the yang role. The follower role and the leader role. The follower role is the receiving role, and the leader role is the giving role. This is really important to understand. The follower wants to be protected and cared for. They want to benefit. They want to receive something good. The leader wants to be listened to and respected. In exchange for being cherished, the follower needs to give respect to the leader. In exchange for being followed and respected, the leader has to show the follower that they cherish them. In other words, that they have their interest at heart. People won't voluntarily follow a leader who does not demonstrate that he has the follower's interest at heart. The cherisher always can say no to anything the leader suggests that would harm them. And anyway, but so parent-child, the parent is the leader, the child is the follower. The parents who show their children constantly they have their best interests at heart and are firm and loving get the best results with children because they cherish their children, but they also expect their children to respect them. An employer who has his employees' interest at heart and shows that he has an interest of the business and the team as a whole and not just his personal ego that is going to have a good relationship. A business and a customer. The customer, remember, is the king. Customer is the one who wants to benefit from the relationship, which is why they're going to give their money to the business. So the business is in the leader role, the customer is in the follower role. Traditionally, the traditional role of a wife was the yin role, and the traditional role of a husband was the yang role. Doesn't have to be that way, but in any relationship, there will be, if that naturally develops into something long term, there will be a role, and you need to decide what role you want to play. If you want to be the cherished person in a relationship, and by the way, you can have different relationships in which you play different roles. Like you could be the owner of a business and want to be the leader role, and you could be a person who in a marital intimate role wants to be the follower, whatever, okay? But if you want someone to cherish you, you have to first understand your own needs and be willing to communicate them. And you must be willing to appreciate and show respect for the person who's willing to meet your needs. Demanding someone else meets your needs is tyrannical and is an entitlement mentality where you think that they should give to you and receive nothing in return. Respect is earned, and also the idea of trust is gained, which I talked about earlier. Respect is the desire to be appreciated and accepted as a leader. If a person wants to earn respect, they have to set aside their own emotional needs to take care of others. Traditionally, in most cultures, men went through a rite of passage in which they were thrown out into a situation where they had to man up, meaning that they had to show that they were willing to sacrifice their own emotional needs for the benefit of the team. And that was considered their rite of passage for them to become a man. In other words, the man, the traditional male role model was that you're willing to show that I'm willing to make sacrifices in order to benefit the people who I am taking care of. Okay, and in return, I want to be respected. Now, a leader who is leading for their own self-interest, for their own selfish interest, they're leading because they're trying to control the other person into giving them what they want, is never going to be a respected leader. They might be feared and they might be obeyed out of fear, but they will never be obeyed out of respect. They can't get the respect. A good leader earns respect because he's always showing the people he's leading that he has their best interests at heart. Parents earn respect. That is children's voluntary. Remember, voluntary is the key in filial relationships. They earn their children's voluntary obedience and cooperation when they lead children with firmness and love, always demonstrating that they care about the welfare of the child, that they're not leading the child for their own self-centered, self-serving interests. Okay? Businesses thrive when they understand their customers' needs and find ways to provide for those needs with outstanding products and services. Then they earn the respect of their customers. Employers earn the respect of their employees when they guide their employees with the intent of wanting to help them be successful at the job and for the team to win. It's not about my self-aggrandizement, okay? It's about the team winning. That's how you earn respect. Now, on the other hand, the cherishing role. Children whose parents love them and willingly provide for them find that love is deepened and reinforced when they cooperate, when they respect the parents, when they show respect for the parents. Then the parents it's always easier to make those sacrifices and do those things for a child who shows appreciation and respect for what you do. Customers who provide businesses that provide excellent products and services find their lives are improved when they get those products and services. In other words, when they support those companies. Employees who succeed at their jobs can be rewarded or with increased compensation or perhaps better employment opportunities because they're willing to be the part of the team and take the role of the cherished thing. So I'm going through this really fast, but everyone is a leader in some roles and a follower in others, and we can learn to be successful in both. Good followers can become good leaders because they understand what it's like to be in the supportive position, and good leaders can become good followers because they know what it's like, know they would like to have from followers. So I have this table, and I'm not going to read it to you, but I just want it's in the notes that you can download, and I'm just want you to think about this, that good relationships require roles, and there are always reciprocal roles. And to get something, you're going to give up something. So you have to decide what role you want to play and what's more important to you. If you want everything for yourself, then you're not going to have good relationships because that's just completely a judgmental win-lose relationship. You need to be willing to understand that in order for you to have one thing, you have to give up another. And be willing to make those exchanges in order to have philia level relationships. And I'm going to close on this is the title of a book that's out of print, The Enchantment of Opposites. Best book I ever read on male-female relationships. And I want to start off by saying, don't be offended. Individuals vary widely in temperament, attitudes, and personality, and the traits we're talking about are very general. The key is that there are differences between yin and yang energy, and we're not trying to put people in boxes and say you should be this way or you should be that way. We're just trying to evaluate the fact that there are polarities, okay? And the polarities actually help create attraction. And also, when the polarities are understood and you're able to cooperate, you create a greater whole that benefits both parties. So just take this however you want to take it, and just think. So first of all, I think that liberating sexes by trying to make them the same is not liberating. People of either sex should be valued for their strengths and weaknesses. That's what relationship is all about. True liberation would see the traditional feminine or yin qualities as being equally valuable to the traditional masculine or yang qualities. And remember that attraction comes from differences. The greater the difference between the polarity of masculine and feminine, the greater the chemistry, the greater the magnetism. So if you want to have chemistry, you've got to cultivate a polar energy to the energy that you want to attract. In other words, you've got to strengthen the part of you that's opposite of the energy you want to attract so that it creates bonding and attraction. Estrogen and testosterone don't just create the physical differences that we see in male and female bodies, they also create differences in the way the senses work and the brain functions. And these differences are biological. They're not the result of social conditioning, in spite of what a lot of people are saying. And understanding that these differences exist rather than dismissing them actually can help improve relationships. There is overlap. 15 to 20% of men have brains that are more yin, and 15 to 20% of women have brains that are more yang. Okay, but the gap overall tends to still be pretty large. And so when we're discussing these differences, understand that any given one of them may or may not apply to you. But there's no absolutes, right? There's gradations of qualities in human being over a very wide spectrum. So we're just talking about kind of the general tendency. And then this quote, difference is not the opposite of equality. Equality means being free to choose the things we want to do, and the difference means that as men and women, we may not want to do the same things. So in other words, it's to allow people to just be who they are is where, and respect them for it is quality. So estrogen makes the senses more yin. Remember, yin draws in. So women under the influence of estrogen have more sensitive senses. They have wider peripheral vision. They have more cones, which means they have more pixels. They have a finer resolution to what they see. They have better hearing and the ability to pick up on nuances of speech. In other words, estrogen programs them to be more receptive. Their skin is thinner with more nerve endings, so they're more sensitive to touch. Their sense of smell and taste is keener, and they have ability to pick up nuances of speech and connect both verbal and nonverbal signals. Okay. I know that I will a lot of times say to my wife, you know where this is? And she can find it in an instant. It's like she can see the whole big picture. And I'm sitting here like in the fridge, looking on one shelf and then dropping down and looking on the other shelf and then walking out and looking on the other shelf. She can walk and just see it. It's because of this wider peripheral vision and this more integrated brain. You know, I ate some, garlic roasted almonds. She walks into the office and says, "Have you eaten garlic?" I'm going like, "Yeah, that was like 10 minutes ago." So I would never smell that. My sense of smell is not anywhere near as keen as she is. Hers is. Okay. Men have a narrower field of vision, so that's why I have to like look at the shelf from, one section at a time. However, we do see over greater distances, and we're better able to judge size and how far away something is. In other words, look at it and go, well, that looks like it's about 300 yards ahead. It looks like it's about this size. We're better able to detect where the sound is coming from. Our skin is thicker with less nerve endings. So when we say men are insensitive, yeah, we're insensitive. We're not programmed to receive, we're programmed to pursue. Okay. Our sense of taste and smell is less keen, and we generally do not see contradictions between verbal and nonverbal signals unless you actually practice looking for them. According to Staying Married and Loving It, a book by a marriage counselor psychologist named Patricia Allen, feminine energy needs to receive in order to give. That is why most women want to be courted before they give up their affections. To occupy the yin role, a woman must feel secure in receiving and only give back to her mate when she's happy with what she gets. To be in the feminine role, a woman must never give more than she receives in a relationship with a man. She has to be willing to be the receiver and only give back when the man pleases her. In order for masculine energy, generally has to do well in order to feel good. To be manly, a man must feel like he is giving more than he's receiving and that he's earned everything he receives. Receiving more than he gives from a woman makes him feel like he's a boy and she's his mother. Okay? Yin energy attracts, and highly feminine women like to feel attractive. Why do you go to the mall and there's like 10 female clothing stores for every one male clothing store, you know, and women also tend to doubt their attractiveness. Now, we're not just talking about being physically attractive, we're being attractive as far as personality, as far as being able to attract what she wants in life, etc. And so this, from the Enchantment of Office by Patricia Huntington Taylor, is probably one of the most interesting things I ever read in any book, that just like blew my mind. And when I started to apply these concepts, it's made 100% difference. And I've taught this to people when they're having relationship troubles. And when they listen to me and apply it, they come back and tell me this really works. So I'm only sharing with you some stuff that's really benefited me, and I've been able to use it to also benefit other people. Patricia Huntington Taylor says, asking women, think of the times when someone complimented you on your appearance. How long did the compliment satisfy your need? Even if at the time you believed the compliment, did you stop looking in the mirror? She says women need to be constantly reassured of their attractiveness or their desirability. So, as a husband, very, very critical. When my wife does her hair, gets a new outfit, does anything, I have to notice it. I have to be aware. I have to say, oh, I like the way you cut your hair. Oh, is that a new dress? That looks really nice. I have to constantly notice her. In other words, by constantly noticing my wife, looking her direction, commenting on, your eyes look beautiful today. I, I, I really love your smile. Blah, blah, blah. I'm basically expressing that I find her attractive, that I'm drawn to her. That satisfies a feminine need that makes my wife feel feminine in my presence, makes her feel desired. Women, if ignore them, you don't pay attention to them, they don't feel happy in a relationship. They want to know that you're drawn to them, that you see them, that you're looking at them, that you're noticing them. Okay? So when I do that, that really feeds my wife. I can tell it just really makes her happy that when I notice things and say things. And it also makes her really unhappy if I don't notice. Right? And it's also what she does. Oh, she's cleaned. Oh, the house looks great. Again, it's noticing what she is, what she did, etc. Yang energy is achievement oriented. The way it says is women are gatherers, men are hunters. Um, Men have an opposite and equal need. They constantly doubt their ability to achieve, to get things done, to produce something. And she says to men, remember a time when you did something successful and won praise. How did it feel? How long were you able to bask in the glow of glory? Did it stop you from seeking to be successful? Men need to be constantly reassured that their productivity is valued. In other words, the equal thing on the male side is to notice what men do. I've had women compliment me on my hair, oh, you got a haircut, that looks nice. And it doesn't emotionally do anything for me. But if a woman compliments me on something I did, that feels good. Okay? And so since men win, okay, see, there's a really good win in this. There's a really, really good win. Okay, so for men, you notice her attractiveness, and this is not just generally, oh, you're pretty or blah blah blah. It's details. Like when I learned to do this, I'll see an interesting piece of jewelry on a cashier at the checkout counter and say, oh, that's a nice pin you have. And you see her just light up, you know, like, oh, someone noticed. Someone noticed, you know, what do you do? It has to be details though. You know, you can you need to see the specific things, which is not easy necessarily for men to do. You also because if you want her to be in the feminine role, the yin role, you have to really listen to her. Like I really listen to my wife when we're out, like going through a mall or something, and she goes and she comments on something being really nice. Oh, I really like that. I put that in the back of my head. I'm paying attention to what she wants and what she desires, so I know how to do things that please her. In other words, understand what's a win for her, what does she want, what does she like, and I can also appreciate what she does, like that she cleaned the house, she did my laundry, she cuts my hair, all that kind of stuff. Um, but I need to notice her and appreciate and be conscious of her needs and desires. And this knowledge needs to be very specific and detailed. And with women, you can even like embellish a little and exaggerate it, like, oh, wow, you are stunning, amazing. Okay. Men crave appreciation for what they do, for his work, for things he does around the home, for his performance as a lover, anything he does that's achieving something. A win for a man is when a woman basically smiles, touches him, shows pleasure, or says thank you for something he did. It's the equivalent for men. Men lap that up. I remember I was explaining to a woman who was having trouble with her marriage with this, and I said, if you start appreciating anything he does for you and just doing nice little loving things for him whenever he does something like take out the trash or anything, okay, he'll do more for you. And she came back to me about 6 months later or a year later, I don't remember. She says, oh my gosh, this has changed everything. She says, I remember because I've been doing this, he now is just really loves to do things that make me happy. Because men thrive on being able to accomplish, understand? To be the giver in the relationship, be doing something for their partner. Okay. In fact, if you read books about this, and also in the men's group I used to go to, the number one thing men will always say is, I don't know how to please her. Well, if you acknowledge things that he does that please you, you'll get more of it. And so she says, I was in the laundry and I was saying, and I just kind of said out loud, it's too bad I don't have a rack here so I can take these shirts out and hang them up above the thing. And her husband overheard her making that comment, and he says, I'll do it for you. And he went to Home Depot and did it this very day because he gets a win Understand? When he pleases his wife. But when you acknowledge to a man, you don't want to embellish it. You just want to be brief, specific, no exaggeration, and just be pleasant. Give him that, win of, you pleased me, you made me happy, I appreciate you, and boom. Okay, now this is assuming that you've got kind of a healthy masculine and feminine energy going on. There are some people who have, really, have a lot of trauma and abuse, and they may have issues, and it may not work. But most relationships, this stuff will work. So suggestions for women about men. Make sure you have his attention, because most men can't do more than one thing at a time. And because their sensory systems are not as sensitive as women, you've got to get their attention and get them looking at you and paying attention to you before you try to communicate something to them. Also, keep it simple. Men get overwhelmed if you give them too much to think about at one time. Our brains are actually less integrated and more like one thing at a time. So if you just give us one thing to do, okay, it doesn't overwhelm us. Also, men like taking turns. So, after you have done talking, let him say his piece, okay? And here's a big one. Men don't give each other advice unless they ask for it. Or at least most men who are like friends don't, because they see giving advice as telling the other man he's incompetent. And you don't want to do that to a man. Instead, you say, hey, I know you can do it. You encourage them. So encourage a man rather than give him advice. Giving advice is trying to take the male role of being the respected leader. Instead, just say, hey, I know you can do it. I know you can handle it. If he asks for advice, give it to him, but be brief, okay? Man section, listen to your partner with your full body. Watch her body language. Listen to her vocal tone. Notice things about her. Give her your undivided attention. Try to understand her feelings. This is hard, okay? Don't take her feelings personally. Boy, this is something I still am working at, because I have a tendency with my logic, when my wife is saying things that are expressing emotion, to respond to her logically, because what she's saying doesn't make any sense. But it's not about what she's saying, it's about the feelings she's got, and I have to try to listen to the feelings and help her understand, yeah, I can see you're really upset. I can see you really hurt. So that you're listening to that. You've got to cherish her, meaning her feelings have to be important to you. And how she feels is important to you, and you've got to be man enough to do that. It's not about you dumping your feelings on her. It's about you being strong enough to handle her feelings. Laughter is foreplay. Women love when a man can have a sense of humor and be fun. And women want to be heard, not fixed. That's the same as not offering advice to a man. Don't try to fix your wife. Women will talk because they want empathy and they want to relieve stress and they want to, about all hail. And if you just listen, yeah, honey, blah, blah, they really appreciate that. Okay. If you want to learn more about this stuff, this was the briefest introduction to this stuff. Here's a reading list. I wish The Enchantment of Opposites wasn't out of print. It was one of the best books I ever read on relationships. And I think I did a webinar on our member area for any of you who are members. But, if your relationships are great, no problem. Do whatever your relationships you want. But if they're not working, you might want to do like I did. You want to think about all this, contemplate it, and start seeing how I can change the energy I'm putting out, play the role I want to play that will attract the reciprocal role. In other words, be the polarity that attracts the opposite polarity, and see if you can, improve these things. So finally, to learn more, subscribe to my newsletter at stephenhorn.com. There's a weekly herb article, and that's how you learn about upcoming classes and publications. You can purchase my book, Strategies for Health, our charts. Also, our member program, next week we have a webinar that's introducing the Strategies for Health consulting course I'll be doing for the next 2 years as part of the member program. And if you join the member program, you'll be able to participate in that and get other member benefits. But I also might mention that it's members, if you think of this like Patreon, instead of us doing Patreon and asking people to support us that way, if you support us by becoming a member, it's 20 bucks a month. You're also supporting us being able to make content like this, to put on the YouTube channel and to put up free information on Facebook and other sources. So if you'd like to support me in what I'm trying to do here, please join our member program at stephenhorn.com. Again, I know that this whole thing of relationships can be very sensitive because a lot of us have pain from the past in relationships we've been in. A lot of us feel rejected for who we are and so forth. And I empathize with all of that. But my experience is that if you work on yourself and you work on your own energy and you work on your own triggers and emotional issues, that you will improve your relationships with other people, because you will improve the energy you're putting out, and that will improve the kind of people you attract to you. So when I was an enabler, I attracted a lot of people. This is kind of be my closing comment. I attracted a lot of people who took advantage of me. And one day I got in touch with my own anger and my own needs. And when I was processing through this, I was pissed. I was just absolutely, utterly pissed. I was so angry, and I was not angry so much at the other people who had done things to me. I was angry at myself for allowing them to do it. Why did I put up with that crap? And it was interesting because during that 6 months, I didn't want anybody to be close to me. I wanted to keep everybody at a distance. And here's what I think is ironic about that. During that 6-month period, I had more women flirting with me than I've ever had in my entire life. In other words, I was putting out this very closed, very strong, very get away from me energy. And I had all kinds of women who were attracted to that. And I remember thinking, my goodness, I could really take advantage of these women, because right now I'm in a position where, yeah, hey, I could use them, and I wouldn't care whether they got what they want in return or not. And I decided to forego that path because I figured I was not in a balanced state of masculine energy, and so I was actually attracting a dysfunctional feminine energy, and I didn't want to be part of that. And so fortunately, I let myself work through and then started to create a more balanced sense of boundaries that wasn't just so angry and closed. And that's I attribute my working through all that stuff as part of the reason why I'm in a healthier relationship today. So that's just, a little bit of my experience working with this, because the position we're in, we're going to attract the polarity like a magnet of people that will do this. And also, just my observation is people will get out of a relationship because they don't like the things that are going on in the relationship. And then the next relationship, they'll repeat the same pattern. And the next one, they'll repeat the same pattern. So the problem is not the people you're attracting. The problem is that your position of who you are is attracting a complementary energy that's equally dysfunctional to your energy. And if you want to stop that pattern, you learn to change your own energy, and then you'll attract a better energy on the other side. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos like this for free. I'm going to put out a lot of information content about this kind of stuff for free, which is why I'm asking if you like this, and want to help me, you can supporting us as a member will help me. But I'm concerned about where society is headed because we're becoming more and more polarized, more and more divided, more and more angry with each other, less able to cooperate, less able to work through our differences in society as a whole. And that's, in other words, it's the conflict is rapidly breaking down into lose-lose. And I don't like it. And I don't know what to do about it. Because when I try to make comments about it, when I used to try to make comments about stuff like this on Facebook, I'd wind up with people on opposite polarities bashing each other and arguing with each other in the comments. And inevitably, it was like I was trying to take a very balanced middle ground, and people would just react with emotionally from either side. Um, so I don't know other than to put out content to try to help people with this. I don't know what else to do, but it's something that is very important to me. So I appreciate all of you who participated in this, and I thank you for joining me with this, and I hope that you'll look forward to me being able to put out more material like this. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you staying with me this evening and participating in this webinar, and also for helping support me with this series. God bless all of you.